Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into computers and what type of computers students should have at the college level. My guest today is Joshua Stone from Digital Doc, and he's the owner of Digital Doc. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Rutgers in New Brunswick. I graduated high school in 1986, and that was my undergrad. I later did my MBA at NYU.
Great.
But I grew up in New Jersey. My first 18 years were in Bergen County. Undergrad at Rutgers, but then I lived in New York for the next 23 years.
Wow. So let's go back in time before we get into your business. What happened in high school? How did you pick Rutgers University? When did you start thinking about it? Was it freshman year, senior year? How did it all start?
That's okay. So when I graduated high school in 1986, as I mentioned, I think I was the first year at my high school that had a computer programming class. And back then it was Pascal, which nobody learns anymore. And we learned on famous amongst geeks, a machine called a TRS-80, which is made by Radio Shack. And I took to it right away, and I ended up taking additional coursework at Bergen Community College.
Wow.
Learning programming and helping my dad in his business. He was an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, built his own company. And I helped him write a computer program to manage his inventory. And
Wow.
I was just so fascinated by it. It actually, I was kind of an oddball in the sense that I had that technical geek side, but also I love to read. And I was a very avid reader, mostly science fiction and fantasy and that kind of stuff. So I ended up at Rutgers for mainly a couple of reasons. One is I didn't want to go too far. I did want a real university experience, which, Rutgers is just an amazing place for that. The campus is gorgeous. You're living away from home, but not too far, so you still have the support there.
Yeah.
And they had a great English program, and I did a minor in mathematics, so I kind of fed both sides of my brain in that way.
Yeah.
And then I graduated in 91, and my first job was at McGraw-Hill, working on a product that was really kind of like a bit of a precursor to the internet. It used a similar network to the internet. It was called, the protocol was called X.25. I'm not going to go into the details on that, but you could think of it as like a technology for communicating across computers, disparate computers.
Gotcha.
And transferring lots of information. And so I did that at McGraw-Hill for about 7 or 8 years, and decided at that point that I was going to do my MBA. And between my work experience and my previous grades, I was able to go to Stern, which I still think is easily one of the best business schools on the planet. So I had a great time there.
Yeah. So how did you go from graduating from Rutgers to NYU to where you are today? What's the process that you took?
So when I was at McGraw-Hill, I was running their technical support group for this product that I mentioned. And when I went to NYU, which I did at night, I was studying operations management. So in the tech world, those two areas come together really in a couple places. One is managing the technology for employees of companies.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, where my specialty ended up was in running data centers.
Okay.
So it was mid-90s in New York City, there was really kind of an explosion in internet companies.
Sure.
So what I ended up doing was, for various internet startups, running their data center operations. Plus, every company needs somebody to manage the employees' technology, so they always do that under me. So I always ended up doing both for lots of different companies for the next 23 years, and that's where it kind of married my business acumen from my MBA plus my technical expertise just from the years of doing stuff on my own.
Okay. So how did that come about where you developed Digital Doc? How did that all come about?
Well, the last company I worked for in New York was a global conferencing company, and I ran the operations for North America. And it was an interesting setup because I was based in New York. The headquarters was in Atlanta. We had done a big acquisition in Chicago, so I had a huge staff in Chicago.
Wow.
And then the global parent was headquartered in Paris. So I personally ended up traveling between Atlanta, Chicago, and Paris on a rotation.
Wow.
As just kind of like my baseline travel, plus whatever other things came up, big sales meetings or management meetings all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a ton of travel. And meanwhile, I had 2 small children and living in a small apartment in New York City. And it was all just becoming, kind of difficult to manage. And it's kind of around 2014, 2015, we started looking to sell the company and ended up selling that company to NTT.
Okay.
And my wife and I decided at that point we were going to move out of New York City. And so I was searching around, what is going to be the next boot for me? And I guess as I mentioned at the beginning, my dad was an entrepreneur. My brother is an entrepreneur. So a lot of that in my family made me think of, okay, let me think of what kind of a business can I start that is both interesting to me and meets the need of whatever community I end up in.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of gravitated towards helping people with their technology needs. And that was a little bit based on personal experience. Like anybody else, I've had awful experiences getting things repaired from the manufacturer, or third parties, and for different reasons.
Yeah.
They both kind of fell short of my expectations. And I felt like there's got to be a better way to do that. There's got to be a way to run a business profitably in a small community where you're serving their needs.
Right.
You're part of a community, and you're a little bit more customer focused in how you handle your customers' technology needs than some nameless, faceless company that you're shipping your device to and getting back 3 weeks later.
Right.
And so I started looking around different franchises that offer that type of service, and I came across Digital Dock. Digital Dock had been around at that point only for maybe 3 or 4 years because this whole industry segment of repairing personal electronics is still relatively young. But I was drawn to Digital Dock for a number of reasons. One is they were experts in the field. They had great training programs and great technical resources, which is important because new devices come out and my engineers need to be certified on a regular basis.
Right.
And I felt like they also had a good approach. They put customer service first. That was always the important thing from their side.
Sure.
And from my side, I live in Princeton. I have children that go to the Princeton schools. I'm very active in the community, and I wanted to be sure that whatever company I started was a part of the community, was meeting the needs of a community, and I was doing it in a way that I would never feel embarrassed or ashamed to meet one of my customers in the store. That was kind of like my litmus test.
Yeah.
If I'm going to meet you in the store, I want to be able to look you in the eye and feel like I've done a good job for you.
Good.
And that's how I train my technicians, because they need to understand the type of customer service I want to bring.
Right.
And so, Digital Dock feels the same way at the corporate level in all the stores that they operate around the country. And that was important to me. And then on the sales and marketing side, they're very fair. Everything is about, we're going to win together. We're going to have fair prices, fair, good quality parts, trained technicians. We're going to do a great job for our customers, so they get good value and we get good value in return.
Great. So now let's get into computers at the college level. What type of computers are good for students at the college level, and what type of devices in general?
Well, so it's a great question. I have a location on Nassau Street that I operate under a different brand called Princeton Tiger Tech, but it's operated by Digital Dock. And I see a lot of the technology needs from students at that location because, obviously it serves Princeton University, but we also draw from Rider and even Rutgers on occasion. People will, travel that far.
Mm-hmm.
And what I can say is I know, most students at the university level have one of each: laptop, tablet, and phone. Do they need one of each? That's an interesting question. I think probably yes, and let me explain why. If you're a parent looking to outfit your child who's going into their first year of college, I think you need to think of your technology needs in kind of three buckets. One is what I would call the productivity bucket. What are the devices the student needs in order to be productive at school? Okay, and in that you obviously need to be able to take notes in class. You need to be able to get textbooks. A lot of them are online nowadays. The days from when I and probably you were undergrads of lugging around 50 pounds of books. Some students probably do that and probably need to do that, but for a lot of people, it's no longer a requirement. And so the technology ought to be able to enable the student to have their textbooks, their ebooks, plus take notes and highlight. Okay, those are important productivity tasks. The second bucket would be what I would call communications. So we have productivity. Second one is communications. And in that area, students need to communicate. They need to communicate with each other, with their social network from home, and with their family. And that's just part of being a social being and living in a community. And so it's important for parents to kind of consider, okay, how does my student communicate? Is it by FaceTime? In which case you really need an Apple device. Google Hangouts, is it texting, Snapchat, Instagram? What are the ways that they communicate and make sure that whatever device you're setting them with is capable of meeting those needs? And then the third one, which most people don't want to think about, but is certainly a fact of life, is entertainment, right? Our technology is, they're entertainment devices.
Sure.
When I went to school, you got your roommate assignments before you went to school, and you coordinated over the summer. Okay, who's going to bring the refrigerator? Who's going to bring the dish rack or whatever? And then there's always who's going to bring the television, right? So that was always the big part. Who's going to bring the television? How big is it? Can you get a color one? Is it black and white? What is it? But these days, there's kids don't watch television necessarily on the big box in their room. Laptops are that function perfectly fine, right? Because they're doing Netflix, they're doing YouTube, just the stuff that they can stream.
Right.
So I say that that would be kind of my way of kind of classifying the needs in a way that you can start to break down what device makes the most sense. And unfortunately, as expensive as it is, the reality is kids really should have one from each category. So you really need a tablet to take notes during class. Okay, that is kind of a need these days. Ever something quick that they can bring around just to read a book outside or whatever. Laptop is for more heavy duty work. You're writing a long report. You really can't do that on a tablet. I mean, you can get like a keyboard cover for your tablet and have like a full size keyboard, but even there, it's a little cramped for writing over a few hours if you're writing a long report.
Right.
You're really going to want a laptop for that. And then for like quick communication, I mean, all the kids are on Instagram and Snapchat. You really need a phone for that. Now, so I really think one of each device for those reasons. And then from the entertainment side, a good size display on the laptop probably makes sense. I don't personally think that a MacBook is required in the computer category, but most of the kids seem to be getting MacBooks. That's probably the most common laptop.
Well, that was my next question. Is there any particular model that is better than others, or is it because of, let's say, communications majors or things like that, they go towards the Mac computer compared to a PC? Do you see any difference between using a Mac, using a PC, or all the other different devices?
Well, I mean, even so today, Macs are considered to be the ideal device for graphic design and publishing and web development, that kind of stuff. And but I'm not sure. I think that may be a little bit of a legacy way of looking at it, because all the software that you're using for those applications is available, obviously, on both platforms. There was a time when certain graphical design software was only made for Apple products, but that was long since been the case, although that impression remains.
Gotcha.
I would say that for most people, you need to run Microsoft Office, or a lot of people are using Google Docs these days, especially in the lower level schools. So if you're in high school and lower, for sure, those schools are all using Google products, which are all web-based. So as long as your laptop is running a web browser, it really looks the same to you, whether you're on a MacBook or a laptop,
Gotcha.
PC-based laptop. So I'm not sure it really matters anymore. In fact, I would say it doesn't. And it's kind of legacy reasons that people gravitate towards MacBooks if they're in the graphic design or web development space. But having said that, the Apple products are very well made. And I can tell you as an example, in my store at Digital Doc, we see a wide range of repairs that come in, and including water damage. Okay, cracked screens are pretty common. The nice thing about Apple products is, one, they're almost always repairable. It's a rare case that somebody has done some damage to an Apple product that it can't be repaired. That's because there's so much expertise out there. They're very well made, and the parts are easily available. And you can't say that about every other type of laptop. Okay, if you're looking at a PC-based laptop, maybe there's a product made by a company called Acer. Okay, it's probably an okay product. It's probably a good value, but if your concern is repair, you're going to probably find it coming up a little bit short, because you're going to have issues around part availability. Just the construction of it in the first place is maybe not as solid as a more recognized brand like Apple. And then the expertise is sometimes not always there to deal with that specific type of product.
Now, how do the schools work with you? Because some schools have their own like IT fix-it type places,
Right.
And some schools don't. How do you work with the universities to help the students out?
So, at least as far as Princeton University goes, I work very closely with their IT department, which is known as OIT, Office of Information Technology, because they do a certain amount of support for students in terms of software support, and they are able to help students get discounts on new products. But for hardware repairs, generally speaking, they either don't offer it, or they're very expensive. And I'll give you some examples of, if you crack the screen on your iPhone, they don't do that repair at all. They will give you my card, and they'll send you to my location. If you crack the screen on your Apple MacBook, they might do the repair, but they're probably going to be about 50% higher than what I would do it for. So they probably wouldn't refer you to me, but if you did mention that your price was an issue, then in that case they would probably mention that, oh, there's another location, you can take a look at those guys. That's on the university level. So generally they'll have an IT department, but they won't do all the repairs that a store like mine would do.
Gotcha.
On the high school level, I work with the private schools. They generally will insure the devices. Like I'll give you an example, Princeton Day School. All of the students have iPad Airs. And when they break, they are insured, but I am the repair facility for the insurer. So I'll do the repair, but my customer will be the insurance company rather than Princeton Day School. But having said that, I have a very close relationship with the day school, and during the school year, I'm probably there 3 or 4 times a week, picking up or dropping off devices. And then there's other places like Princeton High School or Montgomery High School, where they have a group of students who are interested in doing repairs. And those students do repairs on the school devices, and they'll use me in cases where either they're overloaded and the students can't keep up, or there's a special type of repair that they are not able to do.
Gotcha. So how long does it usually take a repair for students to get their devices back?
So we look at it in three ways. So phones, people will not go without their phones for more than an hour. Okay, and that's even stretching it for some people. So we make sure that we have all the parts at all times for any iPhone and most Samsung phones, and then even some of the other LGs and Motorola, etc. So that if a customer comes in with a broken phone, we're able to repair it right away.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of in one class of devices. Now, tablets are important to people, but not as important. In my experience, generally speaking, people can go 1 or 2 days without their tablet before they start pulling their hair out. So,
we don't have any, so we're good.
Have any. Well, obviously, we've already been without our tablets for 2 days. So those will take 1 to 2 days. And it makes sense, actually, from a repair side on tablets, because you do want adhesive secure overnight. So there's some technical reasons why that helps. But, for the most part, it's driven by customers and their tolerance for delay on getting their device back. And then computers are in, I guess, the third category. Most people can probably live with that without a computer for maybe 3 to 5 days. You can always use your tablet, or sometimes people have another device. So generally speaking, they can go longer. Now, those are kind of guidelines.
Right.
And within those guidelines, if people have special needs, like, I deal with it. In fact, just before coming here, there was a customer who needed it for work and wanted to make a special arrangement so that he could drop off his laptop, have it worked on immediately, and get it back within a couple of hours. And we'll accommodate that at both my Route 206 location and my Nassau Street location.
Gotcha. So how do people find you?
I have a lot of different properties out on social media and internet, and people use all of them. Primarily, I would say it's Google is number one, far and away number one. Number two would probably be Yelp, and then number three would probably be Facebook. But then even beyond that, there's my public website, Instagram, Twitter.
Wow.
I haven't done anything with Snapchat yet, but it's on the radar. The way I look at it is usually when people are calling me, it's like on a emergency basis. It's not because I think I might break my phone in 2 weeks. I might have a need for your services one day. It's because something happened. I need a repair immediately. And for that type of that person to find me, the first thing most people are going to do in that case is go to Google, and they'll type in cracked screen iPhone, or slow computer, or whatever the keywords that come into their mind. Mm-hmm. And when they do that, they're going to find my ad, or they're going to find my public website, and then at that point they'll see different ways of reaching me: by phone, by email, by just maps and directions, or Yelp. Yelp would be the other place people might go when they have an immediate need. Mm-hmm. Facebook to a lesser extent. On Facebook, I do advertise on Facebook, and I have a presence on Facebook with a lot of followers, etc. But that's generally more for awareness, so people are aware of your service for the day, one day when they might need it. And then, not to belabor the point, but in addition, I do try to sponsor different events within the community. Like at McCarter Theater, I'll be in the playbill there. Oh. My daughter's high school play, I'll be in that playbill. I'm sponsoring the Montgomery High School football team, so I'll do like all the different things at the community that that you might expect.
So you get more and more involved in the community, and it gives you more attention for people to come to you.
It's very important to me that the community is aware of my services and views me as a local person that that adds a lot of value.
And it looks like that everything is pretty much fixed within anywhere from a day to 3 or 4 days. So people are going to get their devices back pretty rapidly.
Exactly. There's a rare case where a part is only available from overseas, for example, and some people might wait a little bit longer. But that's just the world we live in. None of these parts are manufactured in the U.S. anymore.
So we're coming to the end of our show, and I usually ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there? Sons and daughters are looking for computers, going to college. What advice do you want to give them?
Sure. What I would say is a couple of things. One is think about when you're going to need a repair on a device when you're buying it, because it's easy to get drawn into a low price on a device that seems like a great value. Maybe you never heard of the brand, okay? And what will inevitably happen is one day you'll need a repair. It'll break, and if you're thinking about it only at that point, it's a little bit too late. 'Cause you're going to find that it's way more expensive than you expected. The parts are going to take forever to come in. You might have trouble finding a facility that can do that type of repair. And so I generally advise people to kind of stick with some of the bigger manufacturers like Apple, HP, Dell, Lenovo. Those are the four that I generally recommend, because those companies will continue to support that device long after they're making it. So as an example, a Dell laptop, I have a Dell laptop at my shop now that was manufactured maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a good device. It'll last another 10 years, but it needs a part. And you can easily find a part for that device that's in great condition, in many cases still new, because the manufacturer continues to stand behind that device long after it's stopped manufacturing. So that's something that my advice. Think about whether you're going to be able to get that device repaired 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, and at a price that's good for you. Now the other thing, just real briefly, is and especially for the younger kids, you really need to think about parental control. Less so for college kids. I mean, they're out, they're grown-ups on some level, and they can do what they want. But if you're going to give a middle school student a tablet, especially these days, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and you really ought to have some controls around that'll let you either supervise or restrict, or at least somehow be notified if your child is kind of getting into an area that they should.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming to the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Anthony.
Yeah, no problem. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.